The year is 1250, and in a small village in the south of France, the light is leaving slowly, the way it always does here, reluctantly, in gold. The village sits on a low hill between the vineyards and the olive trees, the way a cat sits on a warm wall. A few dozen stone houses leaning against one another, a church tower no taller than it needs to be, a mill by the stream below, and around all of it, the ripening evening of Provence, where the air at this hour smells of hot stone and crushed thyme and bread. All afternoon, the cicadas have been singing their dry silver song in the trees, thousands of them, a sound so constant that nobody hears it anymore. Now, one by one, as the shadows join together, they are stopping. The song is coming apart, thread by thread. By full dark it will be gone completely, and the first thing the night does in this country is to reveal the silence that was underneath the singing all along. This is history for sleep. Tonight we are going to spend one whole night, the entire night, from the last of the daylight to the first of the dawn inside this village, in the company of everyone who is settling down to rest, and the very few who will stay awake. We will hear the curfew bell rung from the church tower and learn why the word curfew literally means cover the fire. We will watch the hearths banked under their ash blankets, the animals folded into the dark ends of the houses, the doors barred with wooden beams worn smooth by 40 years of the same two hands. We will walk a little behind the village watchman on his slow rounds under the stars, and in the middle of the night we will be awake with the whole village at an hour almost nobody remembers anymore. The quiet waking hour between first sleep and second sleep, when medieval people lay warm in the dark and thought their slowest thoughts, and prayed a little and murmured to one another and drifted down again. Nothing frightening happens tonight. This is the ordinary, working, deeply gentle night that these villagers actually had, repeated so many thousands of times that it wore grooves in their lives the way their feet wore grooves in the doorsteps. And if stories like this help you drift off, subscribing helps me make more of them. Now the sun has just touched the hills in the west. The last cart is creaking up the lane from the vineyards, and on the flat stones of the threshing floor the swallows are cutting their last circles of the day. Let us begin where every medieval night begins, with the bell. Every evening of the year, at the hour when the light goes soft and blue, the same sound crosses this valley. One bell, rung steadily from the church tower, in groups of slow strokes, with a breath between them. It is not an alarm. Nothing about it hurries. It is the evening bell in this part of the world. People will come to call it the bell of the covered fire, and everyone who hears it, in the lanes, in the gardens, out along the darkening paths between the vines, knows exactly what it means, because it has meant the same thing every single evening of their lives. It means the day is finished. Come in, cover your fires. The night is beginning, and we will all cross it together. The French words for cover the fire are couvre-feu, couvre-chef, and if you say them a little quickly, a little worn down by centuries of evening use, you can hear our own word arriving, curfew. That is truly where the word comes from. Long before a curfew meant anything about staying indoors, it meant this bell and this small nightly chore, the covering of the household fire before sleep, and it was rung across medieval Europe, not to command people particularly, but to remind them, the way a parent reminds a child of something both of them already know. Fire is the great nightly danger of the Middle Ages. These houses are stone, but their roofs are thatch and timber, their floors are strewn with straw, their haylofts are stuffed to the beams with a whole summer's dry grass, and the houses lean shoulder to shoulder along lanes an arm-span wide. A single hearth left burning carelessly in a single kitchen could, on a windy night, become the end of the entire village. Everyone knows a story about some other village somewhere in their grandparents' time, so the bell rings gently every dusk, and in every house the same small ritual answers it. Watch how it is done, because it is beautiful in the way that all perfected daily things are beautiful. The fire on the hearth has been burning since before dawn. It is the same fire, in a real sense, that has burned in this house for years, never quite allowed to die. Now the woman of the house, it is nearly always her office, and she has done it since she was a girl, watching her own mother takes the iron and rakes the burning wood apart so the flames lie down. She gathers the embers into a low mound at the back of the hearth, against the stone that stays warm all night. And then, over the mound, she rakes the day's ashes, a soft grey blanket, drawn up over the coals, exactly the way she will shortly draw the blanket over her children. Some households set a curved cover of fired clay over the heap, a little dome with air holes, like a helmet for the fire. The potters make them specially. Under ash or under clay, the effect is the same. The embers, sealed away from the air, stop flaming and begin instead to sleep, glowing on slowly, secretly, all through the night, so that tomorrow, an hour before dawn, she can rake the blanket back, lay on a handful of dry vine twigs, lean down, and breathe the fire awake again with 2 or 3 long breaths. No flint, no striking, no cold kitchen. The same fire opening its eyes. She does this in every house down the lane, she and all her neighbours, more or less in the same quarter hour, while the bell strokes fade off over the vineyards. If you could lift the roofs and look down on the village at Curfew, you would see the night being made, hearth by hearth. 40 small sons, each one gently buried alive, each one tended by someone kneeling in the half-dark with firelight on her face for a last moment before the ashes close over it. The light in the houses changes. The big yellow blaze of the cooking fire is gone. What is left is the small steady flame of a single oil lamp, olive oil of course in this country of olives, burning on a wick in a shallow clay dish, or the modest tongue of a tallow candle, or nothing at all but the seam of red under the ash. Medieval villages do not fight the darkness. They have no way to fight it, and mostly no wish to. When the fire is covered, the house dims like a face composing itself for sleep, and the darkness is allowed in the door the way you would let in an old known guest, and given its usual chair. And the same folding up is happening to the village as a whole. The gates in the low town wall, this village has 2, one facing the road and one facing the stream, are swung shut on their iron hinges and barred with beams. It is not that anyone expects trouble tonight. Nobody does. It is that shutting the gates at dusk is simply part of the shape of the day, the way the lid belongs on the well. The road outside will lie empty under the stars until morning. Respectable people do not travel at night, not from fear so much as from sheer impracticality, for there are no lamps out there, no signposts a man can read in the dark, and the next village is 2 hours away behind its own shut gates. The world contracts at Curfew to the width of the walls, and then to the width of each house, and then to the width of each bed, and the villagers feel that contraction, one imagines, not as confinement but as gathering. Everything drawn in, everything counted, everything covered. The whole known world within call of one bell tower, breathing quietly in the dark. By the last stroke of the bell, the lanes are already emptying. A neighbour calls a low good night across the way and is answered. A door shuts. A bar drops into its brackets with a sound like a full stop at the end of a sentence. Somewhere up the hill a dog gives one conversational bark and thinks better of it. The blue in the sky deepens toward violet. The first star comes out over the mill, and now the village belongs to the very small company of those still on their feet, a company we are going to keep, gladly, for a little while. Because down by the gate that faces the road, A man is lighting a candle inside a lantern of scraped horn and picking up his staff and beginning the first of his rounds. Every village of any size keeps a watch at night, and it works, in 1250, the way most village duties work, by turns. There is no police force to hire, and no need of one. Instead, the obligation goes around the households, the way the seasons go around the year, each able-bodied man taking his turn, a handful of nights each season, alone or in pairs, so that the village watches over itself with its own eyes, and every sleeper in every bed has at one time or another been the waker who guarded the rest. Tonight the turn has come to a man we may as well call Pierre, a good Provençal name, Peyre, a vine grower of about 40, steady, a little pleased, though he would not say so, to have the night to himself. His equipment is simple and has not changed in 100 years. A staff of ash wood, as tall as himself, worn glossy at the grip, more walking stick than weapon, and in 40 years of village watches it has been nothing else. A heavy cloak, because even after a hot day the small hours in this country turn surprisingly cool, and the dew comes down on everything. A horn lantern, a candle burning inside panels of cow horn scraped so thin the light comes through them, glowing amber, safe from wind glasses for churches and rich men, but horn is honest and does not break when a tired man sets it down hard. And in the church tower above him, within reach of a rope, the bell his to ring if ever, in his lifetime of turns, there should be a fire or any true alarm in the night. There will not be, tonight. He knows it, and we know it, and the knowledge is part of the sweetness of the office. His round is small, and he will walk it slowly many times before dawn. In through the lanes there are only a few, and they all lead crookedly to the little square where the church stands and the communal oven breathes out its last warmth, then along under the wall, past the barred gates, a glance up at the granary door, a hand laid flat on the cool iron of the gate bar, the way the constable of a later century will try the doors of London shops. He walks at the pace of a man who is not going anywhere, because he is already there. His footsteps on the packed earth and worn stone are quiet, but not secret. It is right that the village should half hear him as it sleeps, the way you half hear rain and are glad of the roof. In some towns of this age, the watch sing out the hours as they pass, a long custom that will last centuries. The slow call floating over the roofs, all is well, sleep on, and whether Pierre sings them or only says them low to himself, the meaning walks with him either way. Someone is awake, so that everyone else may not be. Stand with him a moment at the top of the lane, where the houses open to the square, and look up, because this is the part of his night that no one who has not slept in a world without lamplight can quite imagine. The sky over a medieval village on a clear night is not the sky we know. There is no light below it, none for 2 hours' walk in any direction, nothing but his own small candle in its horn box, and so the stars come all the way down to the hills, thousands upon thousands of them, layered and drifted like snow, with the great pale river of the Milky Way running shore to shore, overhead so plainly that every child in this village knows it the way they know the stream below the mill. Pierre reads the sky casually, professionally, the way his whole world does. The turning of the stars is the clock of the night watch. That bright wheel there, tilted over the eastern hills, will stand above the church tower at midnight. When it leans west, matins is near, and his watch is old. No device in the village measures the night hours the church may keep a marked candle burning, and the priest knows the slow drip of practiced habit. But for Pierre the stars are instrument enough, and they have never once run slow. The sounds of his round are an inventory of peace. The stream, first always the stream, braided under everything, running down past the mill wheel, which is still now, its dripping paddles hushed until dawn. crickets in the dry grass under the walls, taking over the night shift from the cicadas of the day. The owls, a little owl hunting along the olive terraces with a call like a soft question, and sometimes from the oaks up the hill, the long wavering note of the tawny owl that every countryside in Europe knows. Behind the barred doors as he passes, the sounds of the sleeping houses themselves, faint and domestic. A mule shifting its feet in the dark end of a house, the sigh of a cow, a child murmuring in a dream and being hushed by a half-asleep mother, the tick of a cooling roof tile. Once from the dovecote by the big farm, a sleepy burble of pigeons rearranging themselves. He hears it all without listening, the way a miller hears his wheel. What he is listening for is the sound that does not belong, and it never comes. And that silence, patrolled and confirmed hour after hour, is his whole gift to the village. He will hand it over, complete and unbroken at dawn, one night safely crossed. It is worth saying plainly, because 400 years of stories have taught us otherwise. The medieval village night is not a fearful place. The wolves of this country keep to the high hills in this season, and know better than to come near walls that smell of dogs and men. Strangers on the road at night are so rare that the whole idea of one is faintly absurd. The roads themselves are asleep. The dangers these people take seriously are homely ones: an untended fire, a broken fence, a mule with colic, and the watch exists mostly so that everyone else may be excused from thinking about even those until morning. When people in this village imagine the night, they do not imagine threats. They imagine what Pia is looking at right now: the lanes silver grey under starlight, the roofs huddled like sleeping cattle, the tower holding up the sky. The night is not the enemy of the village. The night is the roof over the roof. He makes his slow circuit square, granary, gates, wall, and around again, perhaps once in each hour, and between rounds he sits in the church porch out of the dew, with his lantern beside him and his cloak wrapped close, and does what every night watchman in every century of the world has done between rounds: nothing at all, magnificently. He watches the stars move. He thinks about his vines and about his eldest daughter's marriage, and about nothing. Once he eats the heel of bread and the few dried figs his wife put in his scrip, and drinks a little of the thin, sour wine of the country from a small wooden flask, and is contented in a way he would find impossible to explain. The village sleeps around him like one large, gentle animal. Let us leave him to his porch and his constellations for a while, and go quietly, through a barred door, the way only a story can, into one of the sleeping houses. Because inside, in the warm dark that smells of bread and animals and ash, the villagers are doing the thing we came all this way to watch. They are sleeping the old way, the way almost the whole human race once slept, in 2 sleeps, with a soft waking hour between. The house we enter is neither the poorest in the village nor the richest. It is one long room of stone under a roof of thatch and tile, with a floor of packed earth swept smooth. And it is organized the way houses have been organized in this countryside for centuries. People at the hearth end, animals at the low end, and between them a partition of woven hurdles or a half wall close enough that on a cold night the warmth of the beasts drifts over gratefully, far enough that everyone keeps their own arrangements. To our eyes it is one room. To the family it is a whole geography, with districts and borders and customs, every basket and bench and hanging tool in a place it has occupied for a generation. The word these southern people use for the household means more than the building. It means the family, the land, the animals, the name, all of it one continuing thing, of which tonight's sleep is simply the nightly renewal. Come in past the barred door and stand a moment while your eyes learn the dark. The seam of red under the banked ash gives the room its only light, that, and a blue-grey rectangle of starlight where the one small window lies open to the summer night behind its lattice. The smells are layered and warm. Wood smoke first, always wood smoke, soaked into every beam and blanket, then bread, from the trough where tomorrow's dough is already rising under a cloth, then the sweet grassy breath of the animals beyond the partition, hay and wool and mule, and under it all the cool mineral smell of the stone walls giving back the day's heat. The sounds of the sounds Pia heard from the lane, but from inside now, gathered close. The slow breathing of the cow, the tick of the roof, a mouse conducting its tiny businesses somewhere in the thatch. The mice are as much residents as the swallows in the eaves, and no one loses sleep over either. This is what shelter sounds like, when shelter is one room and everything you love is inside it. The beds are at the hearth end, and the best of them is a fortress of comfort assembled over years, a frame of chestnut wood strung with ropes, a mattress case stuffed fat with the softest of the straw from this summer's threshing, restuffed fresh after harvest, so that in this season it is at its plumpest and smells faintly of the field, and over that, sheets of homespun linen softened by years of washing, and a coverlet, and the family's winter cloaks waiting folded at the foot, months from being needed. The parents sleep here, and the youngest child between them, and the grandmother has the bench bed by the chimney where the stone stays warm. The older children have their own pallets, straw ticks laid on the sleeping loft up the ladder where the roof slopes close overhead and the day's warmth lingers longest. Nobody in this century sleeps alone if they can help it, and the idea that one might want to would strike the household as faintly sad. A bed is company. Sleep is something the family does together, in one warm constellation around the buried fire, each in a place as fixed and certain as the stars over the roof. They went to bed not long after the curfew bell. There is no reason to sit up in the dark burning precious oil, and the day starts before dawn, but they did not hurry to sleep. And this is the first thing to understand about the old way of sleeping. The borders of it are soft. The evening ended in low voices, prayers first, the mother leading, old words worn smooth as doorsteps. Then the small, ordinary murmurs of a family lying in the dark, a remark about tomorrow's work in the vines, a child's question drifting up from the edge of sleep and answered half in a dream, someone's long sigh as the straw settles and shapes itself. The lamp was pinched out early, the dark came in and sat down, and one by one, without ceremony, without deciding to, they went down into their first sleep, which is exactly what they call it, first sleep, in the plain way of people naming a thing everyone does. It has a second name implied inside it, of course. Where there is a first sleep, there is a second. And between the two sleeps, in the deep middle of the night, lies the hour this whole night has been carrying us toward. But we have run a little ahead of the family, entering their house at midnight, before we have watched their evening. So let the story fold back an hour or two, to the time just after the curfew bell, when the fire was still open and the supper pot still hanging, because the end of a medieval day has its own slow ceremonies, and it would be a shame to sleep through them. Supper in this house is eaten late and eaten simply, at the trestle table by the hearth, in the last usable light of the fire before it is covered. The pot has hung over the flame since afternoon, and what is in it is what is in every pot on this lane, the soup, though soup is a thin word for it, a thick standing pottage of the garden and the season, beans and cabbage and onions, and whatever the day added, a bone when there is one, a spoonful of the green gold olive oil at the end, because this is Provence and there is always oil. It has simmered so long that the house itself is seasoned with it. The mother swings the pot off its hook and sets it on the stone. The loaves come to the table with the big knife. The father cuts, and the bread goes around by age, and the bowls are filled, wooden bowls worn smooth as riverbed pebbles, each one belonging to its own pair of hands. They eat mostly in quiet, the good animal quiet of tired people eating warm food, with the door still open on the blue dusk and the last swallows ticking past the doorway. A little wine goes around in the one cup, watered for the children. The dog conducts his ancient business under the table and prospers. And when the bowls are wiped clean with the last of the bread, for the bread is plate, spoon and blessing all at once, the day is, in every way that counts, over. What remains between the family and their bed are only the small closing rituals, done in the same order they are always done, which is the true liturgy of any household, older than any book. The father goes out with the lantern for the last look. Every householder in the village is doing it at roughly this hour, a slow lamp-lit procession of one around each holding. He looks at the mule and the cow, a hand laid flat on each warm flank in passing. He looks at the hen's ladder and slides the little door shut behind the last tail feather. He looks at the gate of the garden where the cabbages stand in their rows like a congregation. He looks longest of all, and for no practical reason, at the sky reads tomorrow in it, west to east, the way his father taught him, without either of them ever calling it teaching. High, thin cloud going pink, the swifts hunting high, the air soft. Fair again then, and hot, and the vines could use it. He latches the gate and comes in, and says none of this aloud, and all of it is understood. Inside, the mother is finishing her own circuit. The dough is mixed and set in its trough under the cloth by the warm chimney, tomorrow's bread beginning its secret night work even before the family sleeps. The yeast, the only member of the household that labours till morning. The water crock is filled and covered. The bench is drawn back. The knife is wiped and put in its slot. The day's milk stands in its shallow pan in the coolest corner for the cream to rise in the dark. She banks the fire. We have watched her do it. It is the hinge of the whole evening, and with the covering of the fire, the room dims to lamplight, one small flame in its clay dish, and the family gathers into that last circle of gold for the shortest and oldest ceremony of all, the prayers. They kneel or they sit, as their knees allow. The mother leads. The words are the words old, smooth, half-sung, and the children's voices trail the grown ones the way the little bell trails the great one. It is not long. It was never meant to be long. It ends with the small crossing gesture that ends every day of every year here, and then the lamp is pinched, a little hiss, a thread of smoke, the smell of warm oil, and the house steps over, all together, from the lit world into the dark one. And here is a thing worth knowing about that step. Nobody here has ever feared the dark of their own house. The dark of the wild woods, out beyond the parish, on the high ridges where nobody sensible goes at night. That dark has stories attached, and the stories have teeth, and winter evenings polish them lovingly. But the dark inside the barred door is furniture. It is as known as the table. Each of them can cross the room in it without a stubbed toe, find the water crock in it, tell by ear in it which animal shifted and whether it matters. The little window stands open to the summer night, with nothing over it but its lattice, and the night air comes in smelling of dew and dust and vine leaves, and nobody dreams of shutting it. Between the family and all the vastness of the medieval night, there is one wall's thickness, one barred door, one watchman with a horn lantern, and it is enough. It has always been enough. The proof is that every person in this room falls asleep faster than you can say a rosary decade. Security is not a feeling here. It is an inheritance. Listen a moment, before the sleeping starts, to the evening sounds of the lane outside, because the village between curfew and full dark is like a great creature settling itself in its stall, and every sound is a settling sound. A last bucket comes up from the well, rope and windlass making the little song of the crank. A neighbour's door speaks on its hinge and is answered by its bar. Two women finish a low conversation across the lane, tomorrow's oven turn. Whose girl will watch whose baby at the washing in Provence, the soft, wide language of this country, made for exactly this, for evening talk across a lane, unhurried, half-sung. A man somewhere is whetting a blade with long, slow strokes, sharpening tomorrow before sleeping on tonight. The sound carries in the still air like a slow insect. A baby tries out a complaint, reconsiders, accepts the breast, is silent. The forge gives one late clink, the smith hanging up the last of his order, and then the smithy door booms softly shut, and that is the day's true final punctuation. When the smith shuts up, the village is closed. After that there is only the stream, and the crickets tuning, and the first owl asking its soft question from the olive terraces, and faint and far down the valley, one more bell, the abbey's, ringing its own community to its early bed. Bells calling to bells across the dark. All evening, all over this world, every village, every abbey, every walled town from the sea to the mountains, folding itself up at dusk inside the same nested ritual, so that if you could rise high enough above the valley in the last light, you would see the whole land going out like the shop windows of a later London, not in fear but in order, hearth by hearth, bell by bell, a civilization tucking itself in. By full dark then, it is done. The lanes are empty, the houses are barred, the fires are seeds under ash, the prayers are said, the dough is rising in 40 troughs, the animals stand or lie in their warm dark ends of rooms, the well rope is looped on its hook, and the day a long day, a hoeing and carrying and baking day, a day like 10,000 others of which no record will ever be made, is finished absolutely. The village has poured itself into its beds like the stream pouring into the mill pool, and lies there brimming and still. Now the house we entered can receive us properly, at its proper hour, and we can take up again the thread we laid down. The family in the warm dark, the straw settling under them, the first sleep rising toward them like the tide. This time go down with them. The night knows the way from here. Follow the family down into it for a while, because even sleep itself in 1250 has its own textures and customs, and they are worth knowing at exactly this drowsy pace. First sleep is the deep sleep, the labourer's sleep, the sleep the body has been asking for since the second hour of the afternoon. It begins soon after full dark, and it is profound in a way that a modern sleeper, cushioned by ease, can only envy. These are people who have worked with their whole bodies since sunrise, hoeing between vine rows, carrying water, cutting and turning and lifting, following animals up and down the terraced hills, and when they lie down, sleep takes them the way the stream takes a dropped leaf, immediately, smoothly, without negotiation. Within a quarter hour of the last murmured word, the whole house has gone under. The breathing slows and lengthens and finds a shared rhythm, the way breathing does in a shared room, until the house itself seems to breathe one long room full of unhurried air, rising and falling, while the embers keep their small red counsel under the ash, and the village goes under with it. House by house up the lane, the same descent, the potter's household, the smith's, the miller's family in the mill house by the softened rush of the water, the priest in his narrow bed beside the church, the shepherd boys in the hut up at the sheepfold with their dogs curled against the door. If you could hear the whole hill at once, as perhaps the owls can, you would hear 40 houses breathing in the dark, and under them the stream, and over them the enormous silence of the summer sky. The village at first sleep is as close to perfectly still as a living place can be. Even the dogs have tucked their noses under their tails. Even the mice grow bored. Pierre, on his slow round past the shuttered houses, moves through it like a man wading in still water, careful of his own ripples. An hour passes, another. The stars wheel a hand's width to the west, without hurry, on their oiled and silent bearings. The dew settles on the roof tiles, on the vine leaves, on the stone rim of the well, beading in the starlight. The temperature slides down degree by degree until the air smells cool and green, and in the houses the sleepers, without waking, tug the light covers up over their shoulders and burrow a little and sleep on. In the low end of the long room, the cow lies down with a great soft collapsing sigh. The mule dozes on his feet, one hip slack, ears making slow, independent surveys of the dark. Under the ash, the embers have burned to their steadiest, most patient glow. They too are in their deep sleep now, and the house rides the night like a boat at anchor, everything stowed, everything breathing, everything held. Somewhere past the middle of the night, after 5 hours of this, perhaps 6, when the first great tide of tiredness has fully gone out, the sleepers begin very gently to surface, not because anything wakes them. Nothing has moved. The night is at its stillest. They surface simply because this is how the body sleeps when it is allowed its own way in a long winter dark or a long quiet night. It takes its deep draught first, and then it rises of itself into an hour of soft waking, and medieval people, far from being troubled by this, expected it, planned around it, and even had homely names for it. The watch between sleeps, the first waking, in the plainest speech, the hour of quiet. The mother's eyes open in the dark without alarm onto the familiar shapes of her own roof beams. Beside her the father stirs and lies still. Up in the loft, one of the older children turns over and settles into wakefulness as comfortably as into a second pillow. No one moves to rise. Rising is not what this hour is for. The whole family lies warm in the dark, awake together in the breathing house, and the forgotten hour, the hour our whole story has been descending toward, as gently as we could manage, begins. If you could bring 1 hour back from the deep past, not a battle, not a coronation, nothing history would even write down, you could do far worse than this one, the waking hour in the middle of the medieval night, when a whole civilization lay quietly awake in the dark, between its two sleeps, doing nothing much at all, and doing it beautifully. It is worth being clear about how ordinary this was, for these villagers and for their parents, and for centuries of nights before and after. Sleeping in 2 watches was simply what sleeping was. You went down at dark into your first sleep. You rose through the middle of the night into an hour or so of calm. You went down again into your second sleep and rose from it near dawn. Nobody taught it, nobody enforced it. The night was long, and the body, left to itself in the dark, kept its own old rhythm as faithfully as the stars kept theirs. Travelers and books of the age mention first sleep the way they mention breakfast, casually, assuming everyone knows it, because everyone did. It is only our own age, with its bright evenings pushing sleep later and squeezing it into one block, that has forgotten, and when a modern sleeper wakes at 3 in the morning and lies there wondering what is wrong, part of the true answer sometimes is nothing at all. Something very old and once entirely usual is briefly remembering itself. So what does a family do, awake together in the deep middle of the night, in a dark too complete for work and too warm and companionable to resent? Small things, slow things. The mother lies listening to her children breathe, taking an unhurried census of the sounds of her house, cow, mule, mice, roof, stream, and finding each one in its place. The father's thoughts move at ember pace over the terraces of his life. Which vines want tying, whether the far field should rest next year, what the mule's foreleg was doing this afternoon, and then, losing all shape, simply drift. There are prayers for this hour. The church itself keeps night offices, and a devout soul lying in the dark can say the old words along with the distant idea of the monks away in their abbey by the river, who are rising just now, in the middle of the night, to sing. Some couples talk in voices below voices, the loose midnight talk that neither will fully remember in the morning, and that knits a marriage together more than any daylight conversation. The daughter's dowry, the neighbor's oven quarrel, an old memory surfacing suddenly clear, the great snow of 20 years ago. A dance at a wedding, someone long dead singing at the vintage. Some simply lie in the warm dark and let the mind wander loose along the night, the way you let a horse graze on a long lead. The hour is roomy. It has no tasks in it. It is, perhaps, the only hour of the medieval day that belongs to no one and demands nothing, and they spend it the way the wise have always spent unclaimed time, gently. Here and there in the village, a little more happens. An old woman whose bones have been promising rain rises, wraps her shawl over her shift, and stirs the ash blanket to check her embers, and stands a moment in the red half-light, listening with satisfaction to the quiet before returning to bed. A man crosses his room to drink from the water crock and pauses at the little window and is paid for the trip. The great constellations of high summer standing over the black hills, the Milky Way at its brightest now in the moonless heart of the night, one slow star falling toward the sea. In the mill house, the miller, whose trade has made him a light sleeper, notes the voice of the stream without opening his eyes, a shade fuller than last night, good, and goes down again. At the sheepfold on the hill, the shepherd boy's fire is a single red eye. One of the dogs raises his head, reads the night for a long minute with nose and ears, and lays it down again on his paws. And through it all, Pierre, the watchman, makes his unhurried figure through the lanes, the only man in the parish on his feet, his horn lantern a small floating moon below the real stars passing, without knowing it, houses full of people lying peacefully awake, who hear his slow steps go by in the dark and are stitched a little deeper into their comfort by the sound. The watch outside, the waking hour inside, the whole village resting in two layers like the embers under the ash. And then, as easily as it opened, the hour begins to close. The talk thins to single words, and the words to breathing. The old woman's bed creaks once and is quiet. In the loft, the children have already gone down again, the way the young do, diving where their elders wade. The mother says the end of a prayer into the dark. The father answers with half a word, or a breath meaning the same thing, and the warm tide comes back in over them both. One by one, house by house, the village lets go of its quiet hour and slides down into second sleep, the morning sleep, the dreaming sleep, the sleep that will carry them all the way to the edge of the day. The stars wheel on, the stream carries the only voice left in the valley, and the night, having shown us its secret hour, folds it away again and settles toward its deepest and stillest reach, the hours we will drift through next, more and more slowly, as the village dreams and the east, very far away yet, begins its long, slow thought about morning. Second sleep has a different texture from first sleep, and the villagers, connoisseurs of the night without knowing it, could tell you so. First sleep is deep and dark and dreamless, the body doing its heavy repairs. Second sleep is lighter, longer seeming, threaded through with dreams, the morning sleep, when the mind, rested now, gets its turn at the hearth. And this age takes its dreams seriously, in a homely, unanxious way. A good dream is worth telling at breakfast. The grandmother is the acknowledged interpreter, as her mother was, and the dream books of the learned, for there are such books, copied and recopied since Roman times, in which a dream of clear water means good fortune coming, and a dream of bread means peace, have their village cousins in a whole quiet folklore of signs, passed down the distaff line with the recipes and the lullabies. Nobody is troubled by any of it. Dreaming, like sleeping, like waking in the night, is one more room of the house of the night, furnished by long use, with nothing in it to fear. So let the village dream a while, and let us drift with it slowly from roof to roof under the wheeling stars, taking a last unhurried inventory of everything resting in the dark, because a village at night is a kind of ark, and every living thing aboard it has its own way of riding out the dark hours. Begin at the square, with the great humped shape beside the church, the communal oven. It is a masonry vault, the size of a small room, and it is the warmest thing in the village all night long, for it was fired this morning as it is fired most mornings, and stone of that thickness does not forget a fire quickly. The village bakes in it by turns. The lord of the manor built it, and takes his small due of loaves for the privilege, which the housewives grumble at exactly as much as their grandmothers did, which is to say ritually, without heat, and all day it swallowed the batches one after another, the round brown loaves of the big farm, the smith's households, the widow's single loaf marked with her own mark cut in the top, for every family signs its bread. Now at night the oven stands empty, with its iron door ajar, breathing out a slow sweet warmth that smells of 1,000 bakings, and the village cats have long since discovered it. 3 of them are asleep on the warm stones of its shoulder at this moment, in attitudes of total abandon, and a 4th sits upright in the dark nearby, on duty in the mysterious way of cats, watching the square with eyes that give back the starlight. When the mother rakes her embers awake before dawn and mixes her dough, it is to this warm, patient monument that her loaves will come. The oven is the village's other hearth, the public one, the shared one, and even banked and empty it goes on doing what it has always done, holding the warmth and holding the village together. Past the oven, the granary stone below, timber above, raised on staddles against the damp and the mice, its door double locked because it holds the one true treasure this village owns, the harvest. The wheat is in from the threshing floors these 3 weeks. The sheaves have been beaten out and winnowed in the evening wind, and the grain lies now in its bins in the dark, dry and cool and immense, a whole year of bread sleeping in one room. There is no silence quite like the silence of a full granary. It is the silence of the future, stacked and provided for, the silence of 10,000 loaves not yet imagined, the deep cereal hush that has been the sound of safety since farming began. The mice, of course, regard the matter differently and conduct their patient sieges along the beams, and the cats conduct their patient counter-sieges, and the balance of power in the granary at night is as old and stable as any treaty in Europe. Under the floor, in the cool, the great jars of olive oil stand shoulder to shoulder like green-shouldered aldermen. The wine of last autumn dozes in its casks. Ropes of onions and braids of garlic hang from the beams with bunches of drying herbs, thyme, savory, fennel, so that the whole building, if you put your head into it at night, breathes out the concentrated smell of Provence itself. Down the lane, the forge cold now, its fire truly out, for the smith alone in the village kills his fire at night rather than banking it, respecting what it is capable of. His anvil sits in the dark like a sleeping ox, and the tools hang on the wall in their strict order, tongs by tongs, hammer by hammer, and the water in the slack tub holds a perfect small copy of the stars framed by the smoke hole overhead. The smithy at night is the quietest place in the village, precisely because it is the loudest place by day. The silence has a rung-hammered quality, as though the day's ringing were still stored in the stone. On the doorstep, the smith's old dog, grey-muzzled, freed by seniority from all duties, sleeps stretched full length, twitching now and then in a dream of some magnificent errand. And the church, at the top of its worn steps, the one door in the village never barred. Inside, the dark is taller than anywhere else, and smells of stone and beeswax and the ghost of incense, and it is not quite total. Before the altar, a single lamp burns all night, every night, a small red-gold star kept alive in a hanging vessel, tended and refilled as faithfully as any hearth. It is the one flame in the village excused from the curfew, and everyone knows it is there, burning for its own reasons in the empty church at midnight, and the knowledge is a kind of comfort at the edge of sleep. One more watchman on duty, one more light that does not go out. The priest sleeps in his narrow house against the churchyard wall, and above him in the tower the bells hang mute in the dark with their ropes looped up. The small bell that rang the curfew, and the greater one above it, and between them, hour by hour, the tower does what towers do at night. It holds still and lets the stars stream slowly past its shoulder and waits for morning, when it will have things to say again. Below the village, the stream and the mill. The wheel is chocked and dripping. The mill race runs on regardless, spending its silver over the weir all night for no one, and the sound of it fills the little valley brimful, the one voice that never stops in this country, the sound every villager has slept inside every night of their lives, so woven into sleep itself that a miller's child sent away to a dry hill town will lie awake for a week missing it. In the pool above the weir, the trout hang nose to current in the dark. A heron stands on one leg in the shallows like a grey hermit, motionless for so long that the night seems to have been built around him. Somewhere along the bank, a family of otters is conducting its glistening business, leaving lines of bubbles the starlight barely catches. And on the stone rim of the washing place, where the women kneel and talk and beat the linen on Mondays, the night has laid a fine cold dew, and the worn stone waits humble and patient for the next chapter of talk. And the animals, the village within the village, the four-footed parish, each in its night quarters, the plough oxen in the byre of the big farm, lying couched on their folded legs, vast and calm, chewing over the day in the literal manner of oxen, their slow breath making the dark smell of hay and summer, the mules and the one proud riding horse of the manor, dozing upright, ears never quite off duty, the sheep up at the fold on the hill, packed into their hurtled square in a single grey drift, the old bellwether in the middle with her bell silenced by stillness. Around them the two dogs, lying nose out at opposite corners by some ancient arrangement of their own, and beyond the dogs, the hut where the shepherd boys sleep rolled in their cloaks like two commas. The pig in his sty, dreaming urgently of acorns, for the oak woods and the autumn pannage are coming, and some deep pig almanac in him knows it. The hens in the low hen houses, gone up their little ladders at dusk of their own accord, shoulder to shoulder on the roost in a warm feathered row, making now and then in their sleep a small crooning comment on matters no one will ever explain. The dovecote full of folded wings, the bees in their straw skeps along the south wall of the churchyard, clustered and murmuring at the very bottom of their range, keeping the queen warm at the centre, the way the village keeps its embers. Cats on the oven, dogs on the doorsteps, mice in the thatch, owls in the belfry and the olive trees, working the night shift on soft feathers. Not one of them anxious, not one of them hurried. The whole hill, man and beast, breathing together in the dark like a single sleeping creature, which, in every way that matters, is exactly what a medieval village is. The stars have wheeled well past their height now. The bright summer triangle is standing down the western sky. Low in the east, if you knew where to look, the first forerunners of the autumn stars are clearing the hills on schedule, as they were last year and will be next. The night is at its coolest and its cleanest. The dew is heavy. The very stream sounds slower, though it is not. It is only that everything listening to it has gone so deep. This is the bottom of the night, the still centre around which the whole wheel turns. And it is exactly now, in the deepest hour, that away across the valley, too far for any ear in the village, but not too far for a story, the one community in this whole countryside that does not sleep through the night is rising in candlelight to sing. Of everyone asleep on this hill, the children sleep best, and the village night is, in a quiet way, built around them, so before the deep hours carry us off to the abbey and the roads, climb the ladder to the loft for a moment, where the older children lie in the warm dark under the slope of the roof and consider the night as they know it. It is worth the climb. Nobody in any century sleeps like a medieval village child in summer. Their day ends earlier than the grown ones. By the time the supper bowls are wiped, the youngest are already asleep where they sit and are carried up or tucked into the big bed's middle without ever fully waking. a skill of the carrying arms, practiced across generations, the child transferred from bench to shoulder to blanket like something poured. The cradle by the big bed has its own equipment and its own law. The low rockers the mother can reach with 1 foot from where she lies, so that the first stirring in the small hours is answered by a slow creak and hush, older than any lullaby, and the swaddling bands and the little linen cap, and over the cradle, as often as not, some small guardian token, a sprig of blessed olive from Palm Sunday tucked into the wicker, a tiny cross of woven straw, because this age wraps its infants in prayers as matter-of-factly as in wool, and the wrapping is done with the same 2 hands and the same tenderness, and no one could tell you where the wool ends and the prayer begins. The lullabies of this country are in Provençal, of course, soft, wide vowels made for low voices, and they are about what lullabies are always about, sleep coming like a person, walking up the lane looking for the child, the mother bargaining gently with the night, nonsense refrains polished by 1,000 evenings until they mean nothing and everything. The grandmother knows the oldest ones. She claims her grandmother sang them, which carries the singing back before the church tower was built, and nobody doubts it, because you cannot listen to those tunes and imagine them ever being new. On restless evenings, a teething baby, a thundery air, you can hear the singing through the lattices as you pass down the lane, one thin thread of melody from this house and another from that, each mother stitching her own child into sleep, and the watchman on his round walks between the songs, the way a man walks between lit windows, and it is, though he would never use such words, one of the perquisites of the office. For the older children, the loft. To sleep in the loft is a promotion. You are sent up the ladder around the age you are first trusted to carry eggs, and the children guard its privileges fiercely and would not trade them for the big bed below at any price. The loft is warm. The day's heat gathers under the thatch and lingers there long after the room below has cooled. The loft is private, as privacy goes in this century, a kingdom of straw ticks and old coverlets, where the parents' voices arrive only as a comfortable murmur through the floorboards like the stream. And the loft has the window, the little gable opening under the roof peak, no bigger than a breadboard, which frames on a summer night more universe than a modern child will see in a year. The black shoulder of the hill, the tower, and the stars in their thousands, so close over the thatch that the boldest child is certain, has always been certain, that from the roof ridge you could touch one. They know the sky from that window the way they know the lane from the doorstep. The great wheel that stands over the tower at midnight in summer, the bright road of the Milky Way, the star that does not wander, which the father uses on the road and calls the sailor's star, though he has never seen a ship. The loft children fall asleep under all of it, night after night, and it goes into them deep and stays. 60 years from now, the grandmother by some other chimney, one of these very children, grown old, will step out on a winter night, look up once and know the hour to within a quarter, and not remember ever learning how. What the children do not know about the night is almost as sweet as what they do. They do not know it is dangerous, because for them here it is not. Their whole geography of fear is inherited and precise, and it lives comfortably far away. The deep woods beyond the parish, the high ridge where the charcoal burners work, the one drowned pool below the mill that every mother has fenced with warnings. Within the walls, nothing. The dark of the lane is where you play the last game of the evening, the shrieking, scattering games of children in every century, chase and hide and home safe, played harder as the light dies, because the dying light is the game until the curfew bell calls time, and the last hider comes in glowing from the dark, dusty and triumphant. The night the children go to sleep inside is simply the house with its eyes closed, the same smells, the same breathing animals, the same voices below. It has never once occurred to any of them to be afraid of it, And so it does not occur to the night either, which for children as for villages largely becomes what it is expected to be. And the night gives the children one thing more, the thing they will remember longest, though none of them would think to name it. It gives them everyone, in one room, every single night, forever. Whatever the day scattered father to the far field, mother to the washing stones, the boys after the sheep, the girls to the well, and the gleaning the curfew bell, gathers it all back under one roof and one blanket warm dark. And the child in the loft goes to sleep every night of childhood inside the audible proof of the whole family. This breathing here, that sigh there, the cough that is grandmother, the creak that is father turning, the small warm wall of a brother's back. Later ages will invent many things for children, softer beds, brighter evenings, rooms of their own, and will gain what those things gain and lose, without ever quite putting a finger on it. This, the nightly certainty, learned before words and never afterward doubted, that sleep is something done together, that the dark is full of your own people, and that nothing more is required of you, ever, between the covering of one fire and the waking of it, than to breathe with the others and drift. The medieval village has no word for that certainty. It has never needed one. It is what the night is. So leave them to it, the loft children under their window of stars, the baby in its slow rocking cradle, the whole young half of the village lapped and held at the center of the ark, and come away quietly down the ladder, out through the lattice, up into the high dark where the owls are working. The deep hours are ahead of us still, and away down the valley, in the one lit building in 30 miles, the singing is about to begin. 2 hours down the valley, where the river loops through its water meadows, there is an abbey, grey roofs, a square tower, orchards and fish ponds, and a great barn, and in the deep middle of every night of the year, winter and summer, feast and famine, a bell smaller than a voice at this distance rings in its cloister, and the monks rise from their beds for the night office. They have done it every night for longer than anyone in our village has been alive. They will do it every night for centuries after everyone in our village is forgotten. Of all the clocks in this world without clocks, the monasteries are the greatest. They have divided the whole turning day into hours of prayer, and they keep those hours with a patience that shames the stars. And the hour they keep now, the midnight office, the long one, matins, is the secret heart of the medieval night. Picture it from very far away, as our village might dream it, the church windows of the abbey glowing faintly gold in the middle of the enormous dark, the only lit thing in 30 miles of sleeping country, and inside, 2 long facing rows of hooded figures in the candlelight, standing in their carved wooden stalls, singing slowly, evenly, on one another's breath, psalms that were old when Rome was young. The chant rises and falls like the stream. It is not a performance for anyone. The church around them is empty, and the country around the church is asleep. And that is precisely the point. They sing on behalf of everyone who is sleeping. That is how this age understands it, from the Pope down to the shepherd boys on our hill. The world is a household, and through the dark hours someone must keep the fire, and while Pere keeps the village with his lantern and his staff, the monks keep the whole night itself, hour by hour, psalm by psalm, holding up their end of a bargain the sleeping world barely thinks about but would miss, as it would miss the stream the moment it stopped. In our village, the psalms are known the way the stars are known, not as text, for almost no one here reads, but as weather, as landmarks, as the sound the year makes. The villagers hear the abbey's chanting only on the great feasts, when they walk down the valley in procession, but its schedule is stitched invisibly through their nights all the same. When the mother lies awake in the quiet hour and says her prayers into the dark, she is, without thinking about it, singing along at 2 hours' distance. When the priest's small bell rings the dawn office in the village church, it is answering the abbey's greater bell, the way the little hills answer the mountains. Even Pere on his rounds, telling the night's age by the tilt of the stars, is using the same great clock as the monks with their marked candles and their psalters, the one clock everyone in this century shares, the original clock, the sky. And the abbey is not quite the night's only waker. Scattered through the dark countryside here and there, the medieval night has its other little lights, and it is pleasant, from our drowsy distance, to count them like fireflies. The charcoal burners up in the oak woods on the ridge, their turf-covered mounds must smoulder for days without bursting into flame, and so they sleep beside them in watches, in huts of poles and bracken, rising in the night to patch a glowing vent with a spadeful of earth, the only men in the parish whose job, like the housewife's, is tending a buried fire. A fisherman on the big river, out for eels at the weir with a horn lantern of his own, still as the heron, patient as the dark. On the high road along the valley, the old paved road the Romans left, straight as a chant that the carters and pilgrims and salt merchants use by day, nothing moves at all. But at the ford there is an inn, and in its yard a single lantern burns over the gate all night, by old custom, on the small chance of a benighted traveller. And the innkeeper's wife, when she banks her big kitchen fire, leaves the pot hanging warm just in case. Nobody comes most nights. The lantern burns for no one, like the mill race spending its silver. But the custom is kept, night after night, year after year, a lit lamp over an empty road, and if you want a single image for how this age thinks about the dark, you could do worse. The night is long, and someone might be out in it, and so we leave a light. Meanwhile the village sleeps on, dead center in its second sleep, and dreams. The smith dreams of a hinge, a good one, a clever one. He will not remember it, and it will nag him all day like a word on the tip of the tongue. The grandmother dreams of her wedding, 60 years gone, the fiddle and the dust and the torchlight, and smiles in her sleep with her whole face, and looks for a moment like the girl in the dream. One of the shepherd boys dreams the sheep have learned to open the hurdles and herds them anxiously through half the night, and will wake more tired than he lay down, as boys do. The priest dreams in Latin, or thinks he does. The children dream the enormous sunlit, senseless dreams of children, from which they will surface with nothing but a good mood. And the mother, she of the embers and the prayers, dreams of bread, the oven full, the loaves brown, the mark of her house cut clean in every crust, plenty going out and plenty coming home. Of all the dreams on the hill tonight, hers is the closest to simply being true tomorrow. And perhaps that is what the dream books mean when they say that to dream of bread is peace. The east has begun just barely to change. Not light, nothing so committed as light, but the stars low over the eastern hills have lost a little of their conviction, and the black of the sky there has turned some colour, for which there is no name, the first thought of grey. The dew is at its heaviest. The night's coldest, quietest quarter hour arrives and sits a while and passes. In the fold, the old bellwether raises her head, consults some inner almanac, and lays it down again. Not yet. In the church tower, a bell rope creaks as the tower cools. Pierre, back in the porch after another round, feels the change without seeing it, a watchman's sense, the night going loose at the seams, and stands and stretches until his shoulders crack softly, and looks east and begins unhurried his last long round. The village has nearly crossed the water. Morning is not here, but morning is no longer unimaginable, and in one particular house down the lane, you know the one, the house we entered, the house with the rising dough under its cloth, a woman's eyes have opened in the grey dark of their own accord at the hour they always open. The second sleep is ending where the whole night began, at the hearth. And since we are ranging so far tonight, drift a little further, out along the sleeping roads themselves, because the roads of this world have their own nightlife, which is to say, almost none, and the almost is lovely. The road that passes our village gate is a small one, a cart's width of packed stone and dust wandering from the mill bridge up over the shoulder of the hill toward the market town, 3 hours away. By day it carries everything the village is, carts of hay and casks of wine, sheep to the fair, the priest on his mule, girls with eggs, boys with nothing at all day to do it in. By night it carries starlight. The dust holds the day's wheel ruts and hoof prints like a ledger nobody will read till morning. The dew silvers it, hedgehogs cross it on their unhurried rounds, and a fox uses it for a while, trotting neat-footed down the very middle, with his tail out straight, master of a highway wide enough for an emperor. The road does not sleep exactly. Roads never do. It waits, the way the washing stone waits, the way the oven waits, the patient furniture of a world that has, for a few hours, no use for it. Follow it over the hill, though, and it joins a greater one, the old paved road along the valley floor, the Romans' road, running straight as a psalm through the dark from the mountains all the way down to the sea. 900 years old now, its stones heaved and grass seamed, it is still the spine of everything. The Salt Road, the villagers call it, because along it come the pack trains from the coastal pans, salt being the one thing every household must buy, the preserving, indispensable, tax-burdened white gold of the age, and with the salt come the rest of the world's murmurs, pepper and stories from the port, bolts of dyed cloth, pilgrims bound for the great shrines, now and then a lord's retinue with banners, once in a lifetime a king. All of it tonight is elsewhere. The road runs empty under the stars for its whole visible length, mile after pale mile, and the emptiness is not desolate, but restful, like a great hall swept after a feast. In the inn-yard at the ford, the lantern burns over the gate. The innkeeper's dog has the yard to himself and patrols it twice, on principle. The ford chuckles over its stones with no one to carry. 2 days' walk south, past the last hills, the road ends at the sea, and the sea too is medieval tonight. A fishing village asleep above its beached boats, nets drying on poles under the moonless sky, the Mediterranean turning over softly in the dark like one more sleeper, its little waves arriving and arriving on sand, no lantern lights. Our villagers think of the sea perhaps twice a year, when the salt comes, or when a man who has been there gets talking of it at the winter fire, the size of it, the ships, the fish as long as a mule, and the children fall asleep trying to dream it, and dream instead, faithfully, of the mill pool, which is water enough for any reasonable dream. Between the village and the sea, scattered along the dark valley like beads off a broken string, the other villages lie asleep in their own rings of walls and vineyards, a dozen of them within a day's walk, each with its bell, its oven, its watchman, its pier. Our village knows them all by their reputations, which have not changed in living memory. The one with the good autumn fare, the one whose wine is honestly better and whose pride about it is honestly tiresome, the one down the river everyone marries into, the one up the mountain nobody does. By day these are rivalries, gentle and eternal. By night they are a brotherhood no one has ever named. The same bell at the same dusk, the same covered fires, the same 2 sleeps, the same waking hour under the same wheeling stars, valley after valley, all the way north to the passes, all the way though no one here will ever see it across the whole breathing map of Europe. 10,000 villages, tonight, riding the dark like boats in one great anchorage. If our sleeping family could see it the way we can for a moment from this drowsy height, they would find it the least surprising news in the world. Of course everyone is doing the same, they would say, settling deeper under the coverlet. It is night. What else would anyone be doing? Come back down then from the high dark, over the Salt Road and the Small Road, over the gate and the lanes, under the tower where the bells hang mute, through the lattice of the little window, into the warm breathing room where we began. The family lies just as we left them, deep in the morning half of their sleeping, dreams going about their gentle work. Nothing has changed, because nothing changes here at night. That is the entire luxury of the place. The embers glow under the ash. The dough rises under its cloth. The stream says its word. Pierre is at the gate, feeling the night begin to loosen. And far away in the east, below the rim of the world, tomorrow is quietly being decided, before we follow her to the hearth, while the village lies in its last and lightest hour of sleep, and nothing anywhere needs our attention. Let the mind drift, the way minds drift at this hour, along the whole slow ring of the year. Because tonight is a summer night, and summer is only one of the night's 4 costumes here. A village is not one night. It is a wheel of nights, turning through the seasons, and every family on this hill could tell you drowsily, without opening their eyes, exactly how each season sleeps. Winter first, because winter is when the night is largest. In midwinter, this valley gets barely 9 hours of daylight, and the dark stretches enormous on either side of it. 15 hours between the covering of the fire and the waking of it, far more night than anybody can sleep through in one piece. Winter is when the 2 sleeps grow long and stately, with a wide waking hour between them. Winter is when the family bed justifies every rope and every armful of straw in it, everyone drawn close under sheepskins and wool, the youngest in the warm middle, and the animal's breath at the far end of the room, a genuine part of the household heating, gratefully accounted. Winter is when the mistral comes, the great cold wind of this country, pouring down the river valley from the north for days at a time, leaning on the shutters, mining at the thatch, making the whole roof speak, and a mistral night is its own particular coziness, for there is no snugness like the snugness of a stone house, with its fire banked and its door barred, while the wind spends its temper on the tiles. The villagers sleep well in the mistral. It is, they will tell you, a clean wind. It scours the sky, and when it drops, after its customary 3 or 6 or 9 days, the old people insist it keeps count, the stars it leaves behind are the sharpest of the year. Winter nights are also the sociable ones, strange as that sounds. In the black months, the evenings are far too long to sleep away entirely, and so between supper and first sleep, the households visit a custom old as the hills, 2 or 3 families gathering in one room to share one fire and one lamp instead of burning 3, the women spinning by feel more than sight, wool moving from distaff to spindle in fingers that could do it blind, the men mending harness or just sitting in the immemorial way of men in firelight, and the talk going around, low and easy stories everyone knows, told again because winter is when they are told, the saints and the wolves and the grandfather who traded a mule at the fair and came home richer than he left, which no one believes and everyone loves. The children fall asleep in laps and against shoulders and are carried home warm through the cold lanes under more stars than the summer ever shows. That too is the medieval night, not only sleep, but the long firelit anteroom of sleep, where a village knits itself together one winter evening at a time. Spring nights are the working nights, the anxious, hopeful ones. Spring is lambing at the fold, and lanterns burning in the small hours, and the shepherd up to his elbows in the urgent business of new life, while his dogs stand grave and useful at the hurdles. Half the village lambs are born in the dark, as lambs prefer, and many a March night ends with a weak twin wrapped in sacking, warming back to life in the ashes glow at somebody's hearth, a spring picture as common here as blossom. Spring is frost watch in the vineyards on clear, still nights after warm days, when a grower stands at his door at midnight sniffing the air like his own mule, judging whether the cold will bite the new green shoots, and small smoky fires are sometimes lit between the rows before dawn, so that a spring night in bud time can wear a string of low red stars along the hillside. And spring nights are loud, gloriously so, the stream running full and important with the far-off mountain melt, the frogs in the washing pool holding parliaments that last till dawn, and the nightingales arriving in the thickets in April to sing all night, every night, for weeks, a sound so rich and so relentless that the villagers, who have heard it every spring of their lives, sleep straight through the most celebrated birdsong on earth, the way the miller sleeps through his stream. And autumn nights smell of the wine harvest. For a few urgent weeks the whole village works dawn to dusk in the vines with baskets and pruning knives, and the presses run into the evening, and the night air in the lanes is sweet and heady with crushed grapes and new must, and the fermenting vats in the cellars mutter and sigh to themselves in the dark, like a new species of sleeping animal added to the ark. Autumn is when the pig goes to the oak woods for acorns and comes home portly and pleased. Autumn is the night of the first fire relit early some crisp evening in October, when the family lingers at the hearth an hour past the usual time, holding hands out to flames they have not needed since April, and the winter sociability begins to gather itself. And at the very hinge of the year sits the one night when the whole valley turns the rules upside down, the vigil of the Nativity, midwinter's midnight, when for once the village does not sleep through the deep hours, but rises in them, and wraps up, and goes out every household, lanterns bobbing down the dark lanes like a procession of glowworms, to the church, lit that night with every candle it owns, for the Mass at midnight, and afterward walks home through the cold under the great wheel of the winter stars, calling low greetings from lane to lane, and eats a little of the special sweet things by the wakened fire, and goes to bed at last in the small hours, feeling that the night itself has been turned inside out and found to be lined with gold. One night a year, the village and the abbey keep the same hours. One night a year, everyone is the watchman. All of that is folded, sleeping, inside tonight, the way the whole year is folded inside any of its days. The winter visits and the spring lanterns, the nightingales and the new wine, the midnight mass and the mistral. Our summer night carries them all lightly, the way the granary carries the year's bread. And perhaps that is the deepest comfort this village knows, deeper than the barred gates and the watchman's round. The sheer roundness of it, night following night, each one a stitch in a pattern so long and so repeated that no single stitch ever bears any weight alone. Tomorrow night the bell will ring again, the fires will be covered again, the stars will come down close again, and the two sleeps will divide the dark between them again, as they did for the grandmother, as they will for the child breathing in the loft. Nothing here is fragile. Everything here is practiced. The night is the oldest habit this village has, and it fits like the worn grip of Pyrrha's ash staff, like the smooth beam of the door bar, like bare feet in the hollows of a stone doorstep, fits the way only things shaped by 10,000 repetitions ever fit. The east, while we drifted, has committed itself. The grey there has climbed and paled. The lowest stars have quietly gone missing. A bird, one single bird, a redstart on a roof ridge, the appointed first speaker of this parish, has made a short remark into the silence, listened, and made it again. Down the lane in the house we know, the woman of the hearth is up, wrapped in her shawl, kneeling at the fireplace in the dark, exactly where we first saw her kneel at dusk. The circle is closing. Come and watch the fire wake. She works by feel and long habit in a dark that is no longer quite dark. First the ash blanket comes back, drawn aside with the iron in 3 or 4 practice strokes, exactly as it was drawn up, and there beneath it, please God, as every morning, the embers, smaller than she left them, greyed deep, but alive, a dozen seeds of fire that have crossed the whole night under their covers, just as the family crossed it under theirs. She leans close and blows one long steady breath, and the grey scales flush rose. Another breath, and rose deepens to living orange, and the little heat begins to tick and whisper. Now the tinder, a handful of dry vine twigs from the basket, the thinnest first, laid on like a wren's nest. A pause, a third long breath, and with a sound softer than a word, a flame stands up, small, upright, yellow, new. The first flame of the day, in this house, in this village, in this whole sleeping valley. She feeds it twig by twig, then the split olive wood, and the light of it climbs the walls and finds the roof beams and gives her back her kitchen, and the night, which we have been inside so long, is over in this room. It ends where it began, at the hearth, undone by 2 or 3 breaths from the same woman who tucked it in. What she does next, half the village is also doing, for the village wakes the way it slept, together and by degrees. Up and down the lane the fires are being breathed alive, one by one. If you stood in the square you could smell the morning arriving, hearth by hearth, that first sweet sharpness of new smoke on cold air, and the sounds of the houses change from breathing to stirring. A bench scraped, a crock unstopped, a ladder creaking under a half-asleep boy sent down to see to the mule. The mother sets the 3-legged pot into the new flames with water and yesterday's porridge to loosen. She turns back her rising dough, punches it down with a fist, and shapes the loaves on the floured board, quick and certain, and cuts the house mark in each crust. This house's mark, her husband's father's mark, older than anyone can say. The loaves go under their cloth to prove again by the warmth. After full light, she will carry the board on her hip to the big oven, where the baker's fire is already roaring, for the baker's wife woke before anyone, as she always does. Hers is the true first fire of the village, and the smoke standing up straight from the oven house chimney into the pale sky is the village's morning banner, run up while the stars were still out. Outside, the light is doing the oldest, best trick in the world, and no one is watching it but us, the redstart and Pierre. The grey in the east has warmed to a colour like the inside of a shell. The hills have edges again. Overhead the sky is still night, still holding 2 or 3 of the great stars, but it is night going transparent, night with morning shining through it. The valley is filled to the brim with the coldest, cleanest air of the whole 24 hours, and every roof and vine row and cart rut is beaded silver with the dew. The swallows are awake in the eaves, conversing in soft electric chirrups, not yet flying. The redstart on the ridgepole has been joined by a blackbird in the churchyard, and the blackbird, as blackbirds will, has decided the occasion calls for a real song, unspooling long, sweet, deliberate phrases over the lanes, as though there had never been a morning before. From the fold on the hill comes the first true daylight sound of the farm, the sheep beginning to talk, one deep old voice, and then a scatter of higher answers, the flock reassembling its opinions, and the dogs stand and shake themselves head to tail and are on duty in an instant, because dogs do not wake by degrees. Pierre hears it all from the gate, where his last round has brought him, and he does now the 2 things his whole night has aimed at. He unbars the gates, first the road gate, then the stream gate, lifting the beams out of their brackets and swinging the leaves back against the wall, so that the village opens its eyes to the road and the world, and then he climbs the church tower steps, takes the small bell's rope and rings the morning. Not the slow covered fire strokes of dusk, but a brighter, quicker peal, the sound of a lid coming off. It is the last act of his watch, and he makes it a good one. By the time the rope stills, the priest is lighting the altar candles for the dawn office beneath him. The first hens are down their ladders and stalking the lanes like small important officials. The miller has knocked the chock from his wheel, and the great dripping circle turns, groans once, and settles into its day-long rumble, and the valley gets its heartbeat back. Pierre comes down the tower steps into the square and meets the morning shift of the whole world. Neighbours at their doors, The baker's boy with the first hot loaves on a board, the oxen swaying out toward the fields in their yokes with their breath steaming. He hands the village back. No one thanks him any more than anyone thanks the stream. His night's work is of the kind that is only visible when it is not done, and it was done, and so the morning simply begins. He goes home up the lane with his lantern out and his staff on his shoulder, and eats warm bread standing at his own hearth, and lies down in the bed his wife has just left, in the hollow of her warmth, and sleeps the one villager whose night ends at sunrise, while around his shuttered window the day he guarded into being goes about its business. Stay a little in the early light before we go and look at what the night made, because a medieval morning is the night's ledger and every line in it is credit. The bread first. By mid-morning the big oven has swallowed and returned the whole village's baking, and the loaves come home on boards and hips down every lane, brown and hollow-sounding, and marked each with its house. And the smell of them, mixed with new smoke and dew, is the smell of the entire Middle Ages, if the Middle Ages had to choose one. The bread is the night's plainest gift. The dough rose in the dark while everyone slept. The embers lived in the dark so the ovens could roar at dawn, and the loaf on the table at noon is simply last night, transformed and sliced. When the family eats porridge and bread in the morning, bread and cheese and onions in the field at midday, the pot soup and more bread at dusk, the grandmother says the old grace, and it is a short one, because between people and bread in this country, everything important has already been understood for a very long time. The strength, next the plain, unglamorous, essential strength of rested bodies. Hoes swing all day in the vine rows on the sleep the vineyard workers banked in the dark. The miller's arms wrestle his sacks because the stream sang him under twice over. The smith's hammer keeps its ringing rhythm from the day's first horseshoe to the last mended share on the credit of his 2 sleeps. Even tempers run on it. Villages are small and lives are close, and everyone knows the sayings about words spoken tired. The night, with its long truce and its quiet hour for turning things over, settles half the village's disputes before they are ever spoken aloud. The manor court, when it sits under the elm on its appointed days, is the shorter for it. Sleep, in a world that runs entirely on muscle and neighborliness, is not rest from the economy. It is the economy, its foundation course relayed every single night, stone by stone in the dark. And something else, harder to weigh than bread or strength, but carried out of the night by everyone who slept in it. The sheer settledness of people who have never once in their whole lives doubted where they would sleep or among whom. Watch the villagers pass one another in the lanes this morning, the nod, the half-word, the unhurried business of people who were, in a sense, all guests in one another's houses 8 hours ago, whose roofs stand close enough to share the same rain, who heard the same owl and will hear the same bell. The night they cross together is a rope, woven fresh every dusk, binding the whole hill. And though not one of them would ever put it that way, they would say, if pressed, that it was a quiet night, and look at the sky and say the mistral might come by Friday. They hold the rope all day without knowing it, in the way they lend and borrow, in the way the widow's field somehow gets its hoeing, in the way every child on the hill has 40 doors it may knock on at need. Historians will sift the records of villages like this one, the court rolls, the tithe lists, the wills leaving a second-best bed looking for the thing that held them together through plague and bad harvest and 600 winters. The villagers could have told them drowsily, any midnight of the year. What holds a village together is everything it does between the covering of the fire and the waking of it. The day divides them into owners and neighbors and rivals. The night makes them one animal, breathing. The sun is fully up now, standing clear of the eastern hills, and the valley has put on all its colors, the grey silver of the olives, the green ranks of the vines, the tawny stubble of the shorn fields, the stream flashing at the weir. The cicadas have started again, first one dry stitch in the pines, then 10, then the whole shimmering fabric, and with their song, the great wheel has visibly turned. This is no longer last night's world, but tomorrow's, already warming, already busy, already leaning toward its own dusk. Up at the fold, the flock streams out through the opened hurdles onto the hill, like water let out of a basin. The carts are away to the far fields, the forge has found its anvil note, and in the church tower the small bell hangs silent in the climbing light, resting, waiting for the far side of the day, because tonight, at the hour when the light goes soft and blue, it will ring again, the same slow strokes with a breath between them, and every soul on this hill will begin again the oldest routine they own. Cover the fire, bar the door, say the words. Lie down together in the dark and trust the night as their parents did, as their children will, as we are about to do ourselves. And that is where we shall leave them. Not at an ending, because a village's nights do not end, but at the top of the circle, with the whole bright day to spend before the bell. Our watch is over. Like Pierre, we can hand it back and go to our rest. The last part of this story is not really a chapter at all. It is just the winding down the same night, passing one more time, slower and softer, for no one now but you. So let the day spend itself quickly, the way remembered days do. Morning to noon in a breath, the heat climbing, the cicadas carrying the afternoon, the shadows of the olive trees turning like slow blue clock hands around their trunks. And let the light go long and gold again, and the carts creak home, and the swallows rise for their evening circles. And here once more is the hour where we came in. The sun touching the western hills, the air smelling of hot stone and thyme and bread, and the bell beginning unhurried, its slow strokes with a breath between them, drifting out over the vineyards in the blue dusk. You know what it is saying now. The day is finished. Come in, cover the fire. The night is beginning, and we will all cross it together. There is nothing left for you to do tonight. Everything is being seen to, by people who have done it 10,000 times. The woman kneels at her hearth and rakes the soft grey blanket over the embers, and the little sons go under, one by one, all down the lane, safe until morning. The doors are shut, and the bars drop into their worn brackets, one after another, like a row of gentle full stops. The gates close on the empty road. The lamp in the church settles to its small, steady burning, excused from every curfew, keeping its own watch. The cats find the warm shoulder of the oven. The hens are up their ladders. The bees are clustered and murmuring. The sheep are a single grey drift inside the hurdles, and the dogs lie nose out at the corners, and the shepherd boys are rolled in their cloaks. The mill wheel is chopped and dripping, and the stream goes on alone, saying the one long silver word it has been saying under this village since before the village came. And Pierre lights his candle in its lantern of horn, and takes up the staff worn glossy at the grip, and steps out into the lanes for the first slow round. You can let his footsteps take over from here. That is what they are for. Unhurried on the packed earth, quiet past the shuttered houses, pausing at the gate, moving on. The stars are coming down close again, thousands upon thousands, the great pale river of them running shore to shore above the tower, and under them the village lies breathing in the dark, one large gentle animal, and the watchman walks its boundaries at the pace of a man who is not going anywhere because he is already there. The houses are going down into first sleep now. The breathing is finding its shared rhythm, room by room. The cow sighs in the dark end of the house. The embers tick once under the ash and are still, and sleep takes the tired the way the stream takes a leaf smoothly, without negotiation, down and down into the deep first water of the night. And if you should surface, somewhere in the middle of the dark, the way sleepers surfaced in every one of these houses, in every one of these centuries, you know now what that hour is. It is not the night going wrong. It is the oldest hour there is, the quiet watch between the sleeps, roomy and unclaimed, with nothing in it to fear and nothing in it to do. Medieval hands would tend it like an ember, Lie warm, let the mind graze on its long lead, say an old word or two into the dark if you like, and drift down again when the tide comes back. The monks are singing that hour away in the valley on behalf of everyone asleep. The lantern is burning over the inn gate on the small chance of a traveller. The watchman is passing in the lane, and his slow steps are stitching you deeper into your comfort, the way they have stitched sleepers into comfort for 1,000 years. Someone is awake so that you may not be. Someone is keeping the fire. Someone is walking the walls. The stars wheel west without hurry on their oiled and silent bearings. The dew settles on the roof tiles and the vine leaves and the stone rim of the well. The bell tower holds up the sky and lets the stars stream slowly past its shoulder. The stream says its one long word. The embers cross the night under their soft grey blanket, glowing on secretly, patiently, needing nothing. And the village sleeps, and the valley sleeps, and the roads lie empty between the sleeping villages all the way to the sleeping sea. And the night, the deep, practiced, ancient, gentle night, goes on holding them all the way it is holding you now. Sleep well. The watchman has the rest. Sleep well. The watchman has the rest. The fires are covered, the doors are barred. Someone is awake so that you may not be. The stars wheel west without hurry. The village sleeps, and the valley sleeps, and the night holds them all.